Hi, my name is Julia Bullock, and this is Group 30's final review video. Our given feedback on what to improve on was a consistent volume of audio. Please feel free to comment if we have improved on that well enough. Here is Nick Allgood to start us off with the review session.
During the Progressive Era of 1900 to 1950, we begin to see changes throughout America. Corporations used to be a smaller form of employment in the previous era, but during the Progressive Era, they are the main source of employment of engineers. By 1925, 75% of all American engineers are employed by the government or corporations. Companies who have more than 10,000 employees are employing 35% of all engineers. Engineers become more ingrained in the corporate lifestyle and the mentality. Engineers are loyal to their employers and gain many benefits. These include things like better pay and management positions. The disadvantages come with the feeling of being another cog in the wheel, but many engineers feel the pull is worth the push. As engineers stay loyal to their corporations, they move into manager roles more so than any other profession. From 1900 to 1930, around 3/4 of engineering graduates were in management positions 15 years after graduation. These engineers gain better access to finances, and this enables teams to create new, more technologically advanced systems. The downside for these same managers is the corporate bureaucracy in regards to secrecy and patents. While the engineer has gained a tremendous amount of power, they also give the same amount of power to their employers. While engineers benefit from management positions, lower-end workers begin to suffer. Engineers focus on efficiency and cost savings, and this comes at the expense of those workers. Frederick Winslow Taylor created scientific management, and it proves to be an effective tool for the corporate-minded engineer. More work is completed using the same amount of time as before. This allows for items to be manufactured quickly and cheaply. The assembly line forms out of this practice and drops prices even further. This makes it to where corporations are turning huge profits, but the workers, while paid more, have less and less authority. Skilled workers are having to focus on one certain part as opposed to an array of items, and this creates a loss of knowledge on anything further than their point on the assembly line. Every portion of the worker's day is timed, including bathroom breaks, and it creates a huge turnover rate at companies like Ford.
Hello everybody, it's Jonathan again, and I'll be covering engineering and politics first. The first attempt to introduce engineers in politics was scientific management. The principle of it was to replace selfish leaders of organizations with disinterested professionals. The second attempt was Hooverism. Herbert Hoover was called the great engineer, and his idea of engineering in politics was along the lines of associationalism. This concept attempts to decrease waste and increase efficiency through collaboration. The last relationship between engineering and politics was technocracies. This was based around the idea of having an elite of technical experts in power. Now, when we talk about the historical relationship between engineers and the military, 4 phases come to mind. The first phase is between 1800 and 1860. We had West Point as the main military engineering school. We saw the birth to the Army Corps of Engineers, and gun manufacturing became a big thing along with the debut of interchangeable parts. Our second phase goes from 1860 to 1914, which is the Civil War period where the military had less influence and the land-grant colleges were much more influential. The third phase of influence we see, this was during World War I and World War II, and we see huge technological and industrial advances like aircraft improvements, radar, anti-aircraft weapons, and much more. The last phase covers 1945 to 1989, and this is the Cold War era. Funding increases, and engineering projects become much more larger and complex in terms of logistics. Here we see the birth of the Military-Industrial University Complex, which I will cover next. In the Military-Industrial University Complex, we saw engineering projects get so large that they exceeded the capacity of any single organization. In this image, we see roughly how funding occurs and how technologies are produced. In regards to spending in engineering and R&D, we see that the federal budget reserve for defense increased humongously after 1950. We learned about many engineering Cold War projects, and just to name a few, we have here SAGE, the SAGE project, Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles or ICBMs, which also gave headway to space rockets, satellites, and the space race. Some of these projects were successful, like in the case of ARPANET, which opened the door to the internet as we know it today, and some weren't so successful and they were relative failures, like it is the case of SAGE and the Strategic Defense Initiative, also called Star Wars.
When talking about the ethical concerns, it's important to understand that there's no single good or bad answer. The impacts of the process are far and wide. Is the world more safe or dangerous? Cold War engineering led to a tremendous buildup of weapons of mass destruction. However, this buildup did prevent further use of the weapons. Since the funding did come from the public, what potential breakthroughs in urban development, education, and healthcare did we sacrifice to develop military defense projects? The benefits of these programs did spill over into the public: safer air transportation, many consumer goods, and the knowledge gained from the space race. Universities make a claim towards the greater good, but is this involvement in defense research really a part of that stated goal? Much of the results stay top secret due to its nature, preventing the public discussion and debate at university university traditionally provide? Does developing the technology that can only be used as a weapon belong in a university setting? It's also important to remember the impact of all that funding. Facilities are built to do the research, and those facilities benefit the students of that university. Algorithms impact society in many ways in the modern world. Looking at search engines, it's important to remember that these are built primarily to make money. The results returned are not necessarily the best results for the item search, but the most profitable to the provider of the results. Search engines help the user to see what they want to see and narrow the influence of outside forces. But is this a good thing? Search engines also save and collect the user results and sell those to companies to tailor ads. It's important to remember, if you do not pay for a service, then you are the product. With the current algorithms in social media, we've seen a rise in tribalism where people tend to only gather around others with the same views and do not communicate well with alternative views. An alarming rate of deliberate misinformation and lies spread across these populations was used to great effect in recent historical events, noticeable in the Brexit and US elections. This has led to a discussion about should it be okay for people to see only what they want to see. Hate speech is also allowed to run, as the algorithms used to prevent them are not profitable, and so are often ignored or not developed until a tragedy has proven the inability of the tools to stop the spread. Social media isn't all bad. It does provide a chance for the connection and spread of ideas to a much wider audience.
I'll be speaking about the role of women and minorities in engineering and also the consequences of computing technology. At the start of computing, women were the first computers. This work was seen as menial and had no opportunity to rise up the ranks. Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson were amongst these computers as the first 3 black female pioneers of NASA. They made crucial contributions for America's first manned missions into space. When it was realized that computers were the future, women were no longer seen as appropriate, and by 1959, women would train men to step into management roles while the women stepped down as assistants. The civil rights and women's movements of the 1950s to 70s had a huge impact for women and minorities. Barriers to education were eliminated, corporations hired a diverse workforce, and campaigns encouraged them to major in STEM. Women, African Americans, Latinos, and especially Asians all increased in undergraduate engineering degrees. Although they increased, it is still minuscule compared to the rest of STEM fields, and white males still have the greatest access to management jobs. Blockchain and e-waste have unfortunate consequences on the environment. Bitcoin, the most famous blockchain, is thought of as free from effects on the environment, but that is far from the truth. It uses a huge amount of processing power across thousands of computers, which is only going to increase in the future. With everyone wanting the latest gadget, e-waste has become a huge problem for the less fortunate. Inside of our digital products are harsh chemicals that these communities are burning to find bits of gold and metals, which cause harm to themselves and the environment. The consequences of search engines are that they collect info from you and they sell that info about you to others so that the others can sell you products. In addition, search engines have also been seen to reinforce racism. The creation of social media also has its consequences. Since it is easy to manipulate and hack, fake news is a common problem, hate speech is pervasive, and the companies do little to stop it. That is all for this presentation. Thanks for watching.